The sun had barely risen over the quiet neighborhood of Oakwood when 76-year-old Samuel Harris, a retired janitor and Vietnam veteran, shuffled slowly through a weekend garage sale. The morning breeze carried the faint scent of freshly cut grass, and a few birds chirped lazily as the neighborhood woke up. Samuel walked with his usual slow, careful steps, his joints stiff from age and years of hard work. But his eyes were warm, curious, and filled with a gentle spark that hadn't dimmed with time. He wore his same old cap, the one he'd had since his Army days, and a jacket patched at the elbow. Most people walked past him without a second glance. To them, he was just an old man browsing a neighborhood sale. But not many knew his secret. Every Saturday, without fail, Samuel went on what he fondly called his Saturday treasure hunt. He never searched for anything fancy. He never bought expensive gadgets or rare collectibles. In fact, he almost never spent more than $5. That was his weekly limit, a rule he set for himself long ago when money was tight and life was tough. But for Samuel, these garage sales were not about buying things. They were about discovering stories, pieces of people's lives left behind, forgotten in dusty boxes and old shelves. Each item, no matter how small, carried a memory, and Samuel loved imagining the history behind them. That morning, as he wandered through rows of old lamps, mismatched chairs, scratched vinyl records, and children's toys missing their wheels, something unusual caught his eye. It wasn't shiny or new. It wasn't big or valuable looking. It was a dusty old painting leaning awkwardly against a wobbly wooden table set up in the middle of the driveway. The frame was cracked along the edges, the once golden paint now flaking away. The colors on the canvas had faded, almost blurred with time, and the artwork smelled faintly of damp wood, as if it had spent years forgotten in a dark attic. Most people passed it without even slowing down. To them, it looked like nothing more than a worthless old decoration, something only good for throwing away. But not Samuel. Something about the painting made him pause. There was a feeling he couldn't quite explain, something warm, familiar, almost like the painting was calling out to him. He carefully bent down, picked it up, and brushed his fingertips across the dusty surface. "There's history in old things," he whispered to himself, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. The owner, a young woman sorting through boxes of her late grandmother's belongings, noticed him looking at it. "Oh, that old thing," she said with a shrug. "It was in my grandma's attic. I don't even know where she got it. $5 if you want it." Samuel didn't hesitate. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the last $5 bill he had brought with him for the day, and handed it to her with gratitude. "Enjoy," she said casually, not realizing the significance of what she had just given away. Samuel nodded, gently tucking the painting under his arm. As he slowly walked back toward his small apartment, he had no idea, no clue at all, that this dusty, forgotten artwork, bought for only $5, was about to change his life forever. Back in his small, cluttered apartment, Samuel carefully placed the dusty painting near the window, letting the soft morning light fall across its faded colors. Something about it felt different, not in a way that made sense at first, but in a way that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. The scene itself was simple, a quiet countryside with rolling hills and a small cottage. Yet, the more Samuel looked at it, the more he felt that the painting was almost alive, like it was hiding a secret beneath its cracked, sun-bleached surface. He ran his fingers lightly over the canvas. The texture was unusual. Parts of the painting were thicker than they should be. The brush strokes seemed layered in a way that didn't match the serene countryside image. And when his eyes fell on the signature at the bottom corner, he felt a jolt. It was faint, almost erased, as though someone had deliberately tried to hide it. A thought struck him. Asterisk asterisk, was the painting covering something else? Asterisk asterisk. He hesitated, then tapped it lightly with his knuckles. Thump, thump, thump. The last knock echoed differently. Deeper, more solid. Samuel froze. His heart skipped a beat. That wasn't just wood or canvas responding. Something beneath it was different. He gently traced the edge of the frame with his fingers. A faint ridge, barely noticeable, ran beneath the surface. It felt like a second layer hidden beneath the top painting. Samuel knew he couldn't figure this out on his own. He needed help. He reached for his phone and dialed his old friend Carlos, a part-time art teacher at the local community center who had an eye for unusual paintings. "Carlos, I think I found something strange," Samuel said, trying to keep his voice steady, though he could feel excitement and fear twisting in his chest. "Calm down, Sam. Bring it over," Carlos replied quickly. "Maybe it's nothing, but maybe it's something extraordinary." When Samuel arrived at Carlos's tiny studio, he carefully set the painting on an old work table. Carlos grabbed his bright art lamp, switched it on, and angled the light across the surface of the canvas. At first glance, nothing seemed unusual, but as he adjusted the angle, his expression changed completely. "Sam, this is old. Really old," Carlos murmured, his voice tight with awe. "And it looks like someone painted over another artwork." A chill ran down Samuel's spine. He had expected dust, maybe a hidden sketch, but not this. "Painted over another artwork?" he whispered, feeling a mixture of fear and disbelief. "Yes," Carlos said, his eyes never leaving the canvas. "The brush strokes on top don't belong to the original painting underneath. The texture, the thickness, the signature, all of it hints that there's something significant hidden below. This isn't ordinary at all." Samuel swallowed hard. "What do we do now?" Carlos looked at him, eyes wide with excitement. "We need an expert. Someone who can carefully uncover what's beneath without destroying it. This could be something incredible, Sam. Something the world hasn't seen in decades." Samuel nodded slowly, his mind racing. Little did he know that hidden layer beneath the faded countryside painting was about to turn his quiet, ordinary life upside down. Carlos didn't waste a moment. He immediately contacted Dr. Leo Whitaker, a highly respected art restoration specialist known for uncovering lost masterpieces. Within a day, Samuel carefully transported the painting to Dr. Whitaker's studio, a room filled with microscopes, brushes, and every tool imaginable for delicate restoration work. As Dr. Whitaker examined the painting under her bright, magnifying light, she didn't speak for nearly a full minute. Samuel watched nervously, feeling the weight of the moment. Every second stretched endlessly. Finally, she traced her gloved fingers across the canvas, her eyes widening in shock and fascination. This is unusual," she said quietly, almost to herself. Then, without looking up, she added, "I need my tools." Carefully, layer by layer, Samuel watched in awe as she prepared the workspace. Tiny brushes, scalpels, and delicate solvents were laid out with precision. Her hands moved with the careful skill of a surgeon, treating each section of the canvas as if it were fragile glass. Hours passed. Slowly, painstakingly, Dr. Whitaker began to remove the top layer of paint. Tiny flakes of the faded countryside scene fell away, revealing glimpses of something more vivid beneath. Each time a piece of the top layer was lifted, Samuel felt his heart race. It was like peeling back the cover of a secret hidden for decades. And then, the hidden painting began to emerge. "This isn't a countryside painting," Dr. Whitaker whispered, her voice trembling with excitement. This is something far more valuable." Samuel leaned in closer, struggling to comprehend what he was seeing. Under the dull, faded top layer was a masterpiece in bold colors and precise lines. The figures depicted had emotion in their eyes, movement in their posture, and shadows so deep they seemed to tell their own story. Every brushstroke beneath spoke of passion, skill, and history. Layer by layer, the original work came to life. Bright reds, deep blues, and rich golds replaced the muted tones above. Samuel's eyes widened in disbelief. He had never seen anything like it in his life. The painting seemed to radiate energy, as if it had been waiting for someone to uncover it. Finally, Dr. Whitaker reached the signature at the bottom. She gasped, nearly dropping her delicate tools. Samuel held his breath. "Samuel, this is a lost painting by Aaron Douglas," she said, her voice shaking with awe. one of the most important artists of the Harlem Renaissance. This is priceless. Samuel blinked, unable to process the words. I don't understand. How is this possible? Dr. Whitaker's eyes glimmered with excitement. Mr. Harris, this painting disappeared over 80 years ago. Experts believed it was destroyed during a museum relocation. People have searched for it for decades. And now it's in your hands. Samuel felt his knees weaken. The room seemed to spin around him. A painting he had bought for $5 at a garage sale wasn't just old. It was a long-lost masterpiece, a treasure thought gone forever. For a moment, Samuel just stood there, staring at the vibrant figures, the bold shadows, and the unmistakable signature of a world-famous artist. It was hard to believe that something so valuable had quietly waited for him, hidden beneath layers of paint, in a dusty corner of a garage sale. This changes everything, he whispered, almost himself. And for the first time in years, Samuel felt a mix of disbelief, awe, and hope that seemed almost too big to contain. Little did he know, this moment was just the beginning. His life, and the life of the hidden masterpiece, was about to make headlines around the world. News of Samuel's discovery spread like wildfire. Within days, emails, calls, and letters began pouring in from major art galleries, private collectors, and museums around the world. What had started as a quiet weekend garage sale purchase had suddenly turned into one of the most astonishing art stories in decades. Experts from every corner of the country wanted to see the painting, authenticate it, and verify its history. Samuel watched it all unfold with a mixture of disbelief and awe. His modest living room, once filled with secondhand furniture and stacks of unpaid bills, now felt like the center of a storm he couldn't have imagined. The painting, once a simple $5 curiosity, had been officially authenticated as a long-lost masterpiece by Aaron Douglas, a central figure of the Harlem Renaissance. It was now recognized as a cultural treasure, a piece of history that had vanished for decades, only to reappear in the hands of a humble retired janitor. Offers began arriving, one after the other. $200,000, $350,000, $500,000. Samuel sat quietly in his worn recliner as his friend Carlos read each offer aloud. Each number made his head spin. He had lived paycheck to paycheck for most of his life, working long hours cleaning office buildings, hospitals, and schools. Some nights, he had skipped dinner to make sure he could afford his heart medicine. Some days, he worried about covering rent. And yet here he was, listening to sums of money he could never have dreamed of, thrown casually across the room like pieces of paper. Samuel struggled to grasp the reality of it. "This can't be real," he muttered under his breath. But Carlos only shook his head. "It's real, Sam. Every single one of them wants this painting. And now, it's your choice." Just as Samuel was beginning to process the offers, his phone rang. The caller ID read, "National Museum of African American History and Culture." He hesitated for a moment, then answered. "Mr. Harris," said the calm, authoritative voice of the museum director, "we would like to make an official offer of $1.4 million for your painting." Samuel froze. His hands trembled, and he gripped the phone like it might slip away. His eyes filled with tears, blurring the world around him. For a man who had lived simply and quietly, who had spent his life quietly working for others, this was unimaginable. The director continued, his voice warm and respectful. "And, Mr. Harris, we would like to name the gallery wall where the painting will hang after you. Your name will be associated with this work, honoring the moment it was rediscovered." Samuel swallowed hard, his heart pounding. He wiped his tears with the back of his hand and whispered, almost to himself, Yes, I'd be honored." In that moment, Samuel realized something incredible. This painting, purchased for $5 at a garage sale, had changed everything. It wasn't just the money, it was recognition, history, and the chance to leave a lasting mark on the world. He felt gratitude for the life he had lived, for the people who had guided him, and for the mysterious twist of fate that had led him to that dusty old painting. For Samuel Harris, the retired janitor from Oakwood, this was more than a financial windfall. It was proof that sometimes the smallest choices, the simple acts of curiosity, patience, and hope, can lead to life-altering discoveries. A $5 painting had become a $1.4 million legacy, and the world would never forget the man who found it. The day of the museum unveiling arrived, and Samuel Harris stood quietly in the front row, his hands resting lightly on his worn cane. Even at 76, he had learned patience, but today his fingers trembled ever so slightly. The room buzzed with anticipation. Museum staff scurried about. Reporters adjusted their cameras, and a crowd of art lovers, historians, and dignitaries filled the space. The lights dimmed, and a hush fell over everyone. A deep breath, a gentle tug of the velvet curtain, and then it dropped. The painting gleamed under the museum's soft, warm lighting. Every stroke, every shadow, every vibrant hue that had been hidden for decades now radiated with life. The crowd gasped. Cameras flashed, capturing the moment from every angle. Reporters whispered to each other, some scribbling notes frantically, others already typing headlines on their phones. Lost Harlem Renaissance masterpiece found. Garage sale treasure worth millions. But Samuel didn't hear the murmurs or see the cameras. His eyes were fixed on the painting, not because of its fame or value, but because of what it represented. He thought back to the quiet, ordinary morning when he had picked up the dusty, forgotten canvas for just $5. He remembered the texture of the paint under his fingers, the strange feeling that something hidden lay beneath, and the thrill of discovery that had kept his heart racing. More than that, he remembered his life. The long nights working in hospitals and office buildings, scrubbing floors while raising his children alone, stretching every dollar to cover rent, groceries, and medical bills. He remembered the quiet moments of exhaustion, the challenges that sometimes felt impossible, and the small victories that had kept him moving forward. Samuel whispered softly to himself, almost as if sharing a secret with the universe. Life still has surprises, even at my age. And then came the moment that truly defined him. With the attention of the world on him, Samuel made a choice that surprised everyone. Half of the fortune he had earned from the painting, over $700,000, he donated to a scholarship fund dedicated to young Black artists, giving them the opportunity to pursue their dreams just as he had stumbled upon his own unexpected treasure. "I didn't find this painting," he told the audience, his voice steady and warm, filled with humility and wisdom. "This painting found me, and now it will help others find their way." The crowd erupted into applause, many rising to their feet, tears glistening in the eyes of some. They cheered not just for the painting, but for the man behind it, the humble, kind, and patient soul who had lived a lifetime of quiet perseverance and had now become the steward of a cultural legacy. In that moment, Samuel realized something profound. A simple act of curiosity, a willingness to explore forgotten corners of the world, and an open heart could change not only one life, but the lives of many others. A $5 painting, a forgotten masterpiece, a humble man whose life changed in a single moment, and a lesson the world would never forget. Sometimes the greatest treasures are hidden where no one thinks to look. Even at 76, Samuel Harris had learned that life surprises never stop, and that hope, patience, and generosity can turn the ordinary into something extraordinary.